was you've been in circumstances that not many people have been in, and being a martial artist, being a jiu-jitsu black belt, um, carries for you. There were consequences that not many people have to face or deal with, and when most of the people listening to here learn jiu-jitsu, it's in the context of sport or self-defense in the street. But you've taught people where the consequences could be life or death. And then you've also advised Hollywood. So where you're advising people where the consequences of them learning or not learning will be a lack of inauthenticity on screen, but it's a far cry from like risking your life. So in a broad sense, could you talk about that? Like what's martial arts and jiu-jitsu perhaps in particular meant to you as you've interacted with it in those variety of contexts?
That's a great question. Actually, no one's posed it in that sort of way, but it does span the full gamut where you deal with guys. I just came from a federal training and before that a state training with SWAT guys. And so the consequence for them is potentially death.
Yes, right.
And there's a high degree of likelihood with some of the encounters that they face that could happen. So there's that aspect and the way that we deal with conditions, let's say the gear and equipment that those guys are wearing, the situations, the environments that they're going into. Jiu-jitsu doesn't quite unfold the same way as
Yeah,
it does
yeah.
on a mat with your friends and things like that. So it's completely modified. Now, the concepts are exactly the same.
Right.
Angles are the same. Level changes are the same. Principles are the same. But
Right.
in application, it completely changes. And that would be one extreme. So for a Marine or for a SWAT guy, it's a
Right.
very different type of engagement. It has to be more violent. It has to take into consideration conditions and circumstances and
Right.
environment and adjust training for that. And more importantly, the mindset that comes along with
Yes.
that is very different. The fight isn't for a medal, right?
Right.
And there's nobody refereeing the fight, and they're dealing with a level of volatility that's completely different. They're dealing with uncertainty at a level that we don't have. Let's say the two of us are doing IBJJF, and we know the rule set. We
Right.
know the mats that we're going to be on. We know that we have a referee. We're in the same age category, the same weight category, the
Yes.
same
Right.
belt category. So it's a ton of certainty with very little uncertainty. When you look at it, the ambiguous nature of what they're doing is extreme. They
Right.
don't have everything kind of line item. They don't know how it's going to unfold. So training guys for that is much more complex and much more dynamic.
Yeah.
And it takes into consideration a lot more variables. Whereas on the other side of things, as you kind of noted when you're advising Hollywood on something, it just needs to appear authentic. And
Right.
I can say to a director or a producer or an actor, hey, this is how we would do it, and they're going to say, okay, that's cool, but that doesn't look very sexy. What if we did
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And in the end, I'm just advising they're going to do whatever it is they're going to do that looks best on film. So there's a massive disconnect in the space that exists between those two realms. Even when we look at something like laws, the laws that are applicable to a Leo or a combatant in the Marine Corps, they're very different than
Yeah.
what you may face, for example, in Arizona, where you have great citizen laws there, in your state statutes that give you the ability to carry firearms openly or concealed and how you would deploy them.
Right.
Very broad. So I would train those three categories in a very, very different way.